If not, we'll entertain a motion for approval.
I just had the one question that I had asked before. In the minutes, it states the St. Joe Sewer Project at the top of the third page. And is that listed as a sewer project or is that a water project? We kind of just talked about it. Just want to make sure it's correct in the bid.
Let me look, because I probably have it.
You say that's the top of the third page, Rick?
I believe it's the third page, fourth page, excuse me.
Fourth page.
Top of the fourth page. It was $150,000 for the St. Joe Sewer Project. It's in the minutes.
No, that should be water.
Okay, so it's the St. Joe Water Project.
I'm still not seeing it. Are you?
Where are you?
First line, top of the fourth page.
1, 2, 3.
Fourth page, okay.
Mine says,
It's the 7th.
Okay, and that should read water project?
That's St. Joe Water.
Water.
Yeah.
We need a motion for the correction.
We can approve them, let me get back in
I think
here,
you need
as
to-
amended.
Pardon, Rick?
you have to make a motion to
Yes.
amend it, though.
Yeah. Okay, if you look on the fourth page, top, it says Rick Collins made a motion to approve $150,000 for the St. Joe Sewer Project. That should read the St. Joe Water Project. Do we have a motion for correction?
I'd make a motion, yes.
And I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rick Collins, second by Amy Prosser to change sewer to water. All those in favor signify by saying aye for the correction.
Aye.
Motion is carried. Any additional corrections or changes to the minutes? If not, we'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes. Okay, we have a motion by Amy Prosser to approve the minutes. Do we have a second? Second by Amy Prosser, or Amy Dembski, I'm sorry. All those in favor of approving the minutes of February 14th, 2024 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next order of business is additional and transfers. We'll take a look at transfers first. We have four.
We're doing additionals or transfers? Normally we do additionals first.
Okay, we'll do additionals, I'm
Sorry.
sorry. So if you want to take a look at the additionals, we have two. The first one comes from, Developmental Services. It's appropriate to purchase of vehicles. It is from the fund is CCD. Fund is number is 1138, account 44610, to purchase of vehicles. Total amount requested is $9,500 for trade-in of Colorado truck and purchase of a 2021 Ram 1500. Was this included in the annual budget? The answer is no. Didn't know the Colorado needed a new transmission that would cost $7,500. How will this appropriation be used? Trade difference of $9,500 is to purchase a new truck. Specific cost of the item is $9,500. How was this cost determined? It was by a purchase order. Is this a reoccurring expense? The answer is no. Will other expenditures be necessary? The answer is no. Was this discussed with liaison Bill Van Wy? Yes, and Bill presented this last week or last month here about this purchase, so that the transmission was bad, and so this has been discussed. Does anybody have any questions, either from the audience or the council, regarding this transfer? Yes.
Take your motions first and then ask discussions.
We'll do the motion first.
I move that we approve this transfer.
Okay, we have a motion by Bill Van Wy to approve the transfer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Rick Ring. Okay, further discussion. Are there any questions, or does anybody have anything you'd like to add?
The only question I had was, do they have monies already in the budget for maintenance of vehicles? And would any of that be able to be used for that?
No. Yes, they had money in for like oil changes, things like that, but not anything in for the purchase of one because they
Or the repair
weren't
of one.
planning to, well, not one that would cost that much.
And I understand these Colorados, and Bill probably could say this too, has the transmission issues that they're gonna have. And they thought it'd be better to spend that little extra money to trade in and try to fix it.
Absolutely, I agree.
And then you still gotta have your maintenance in it, even though you still gotta have to service the rest of the
Right.
way. This is March. So you're gonna have to at least probably have one more oil change before the end of the year and everything, so.
Yeah, I wasn't referring necessarily to general maintenance, but
You know,
do we have any monies in accounts when we know that vehicles will break down throughout the year? That's a given.
Yeah, they generally include some of that with their budgets. Depending how much the repair is, it may have needed an additional anyways, but they try to include some of it.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and proceed with the vote. We have a motion and a second to approve the $9,500 transfer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, the next one is from Weights and Measurements. And this is appropriate to purchase of vehicles. Fund name is CCD, fund number 1138, account number 44610, account title purchase of vehicles. The amount requested is $67,175, and this is for the purchase of a ProMaster van. The current truck going to need new maintenance position. Current truck going to new maintenance position, I'm sorry. Was this included in the annual budget request? The answer is no. And the reason was new maintenance position hadn't been hired yet. That is mechanic, that is personnel when we're talking about maintenance position.
Correct.
Specific cost of item is $34,500 and then slice $32,675. Would you explain that, please, Susan? The $34,500 slice
So
$32,000?
the 34, whatever it said, that is for the actual van, whatever the ProMaster thing is, the van. Then the other side of it, which was 26 something,
$32,675.
is the second part?
Yes.
Okay, that would be for putting in some unit that measures the gas and, yep, see, they know I don't totally know what I'm talking about. I don't know, something to measure.
Yeah, Bill, can you clarify that, please?
Yes, it is the Seraphim calibrating device that the weights and measures will use to calibrate the gasoline at the pumps. Instead of filling cans and carrying them back to the supply tanks, this unit, you will pump the gas into the Seraphim unit, and it will measure the amount, and then it dumps into a holding tank. So when he's done at the gas station, he doesn't have to run back and forth with all these cans and all kinds of weather. He can pull over to the supply tanks and gravity feed all that gas or diesel back into those supply tanks. So that has been ordered. It will be delivered, and we will install it into the van. The reason we switched the truck out for the van, number one, we needed a truck for the maintenance man. And this truck which was a previous weights and measures truck, has a utility box on it, which is perfect for the maintenance position man to use that truck. The other thing, we couldn't use it for the Seraphim unit because wasn't high enough. It's got to be higher, so this is an extended top van that he can put the nozzle into the top of the Seraphim unit and do the calculations. So that's why it all took place. It gives kind of a background of why we switched out the truck for the van. And the van is a used van. Found one Those run about 60,000 new. We found this low mileage one for 34.5, so that's the
Thank
detail.
you, appreciate it there. And if, for the council, if you've ever seen the weights and measurements in action when they go around and fill all of these test cans, that's a labor-intensive job. This is a,
Yeah.
I think, money well spent there in a lot of different areas there. Again, and Bill did a great job presenting the explanation. It says, will other expenditures be necessary? Yes, and that's for the bulk measuring tank equipment, which we just heard about. Was it discussed with the liaison? Yes, and that was Amy Prosser. So the amount to be for the additional is $67,175. So that's for the vehicle and the new calibrating equipment. Do we have a motion to approve? We have a motion by Amy Prosser. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Rick Ring. Is there any further discussion?
Just one question.
Yes,
And this is not I have no problem with Sanderson Auto at all. They've been a great business here in the community. But do we get numbers from anybody else? Or did we just go with Sanderson on this?
We did, there's not a lot of those available in the used market. The new market was, like I say, about $60,000. No promise of delivery for up to 12 months out. Patrick Grant and I did drive up into Michigan and looked at a van, drove a van, and it was $40,000, a Ford van, and looked online. We looked on the ad paper, found one that was $41,000. So yeah, we did some comparisons, and yeah, we got
Thank you.
really the best.
You guys did your homework. I appreciate
Yeah,
that. I'm
we
not
did do
questioning
that,
the
and this
integrity
van
of Todd or you
actually
guys.
came out of Florida, bought it at, Todd bought it on an auction and drove it back to Indiana.
Great.
So, yeah.
All right. Thank
I
you.
have a question
Appreciate
for
it.
you, Bill.
Sure.
So the Seraphin unit, is it customizable just for that van? Or if something happens with that vehicle, are we able to remove it and put
Yeah.
it in another vehicle?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is designed to fit between the wheel wells of a pickup truck or a van, and it needs at least 6 feet of truck bed length or van length to fit in there. And this van, it's a longer van, so it'll have room for the Seraphin unit, plus all his other weights and measures equipment and bookwork that he needs in the front part of that van. So it'll hold everything and service it quite well.
Thank you.
Good questions, Rick. Amy, good questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill, for the explanations there. Any other questions from the audience or from the council here regarding this additional?
Okay, so just to clarify, the purchases from Sanderson's, I'm going to verify the conflict of interest form. However, in the meetings with the commissioners, we had discussed all of that and whether there is or is not. And Sanderson only supplied the information and he was not part of the vote. He abstained because of the possible conflict, but I will check on a form.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate the update.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the additional? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor of approving the additional of $67,175 for the purchase of a new vehicle and measuring equipment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, now we'll be looking at transfers. And you should have a copy on the back of the transfers here that we have. We have 4. The first one is from Developmental Services. It is for 2 separate items, and with consent from the council, we can do these in one motion. The first one is, just one second. we will be transferring from legal reference materials to consultant fees, $200. The second one is transferring from operating supplies to consultant fees. Why is this transfer needed? The building inspector had hip replacement surgery and needs to pay the city of Auburn, the consultant, for the use of their building inspector. Will additional appropriations be requested due to this transfer? The answer is no. Was it discussed with the liaison? No, and that was Bill Van Wy. So, first of all, we need consensus to transfer $600 from legal reference materials to consultant fees and $400 from the operating supply to consultant fees. Do we have consensus from the council to do this in one motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion then to approve the transfer of $600 here to consultant fees?
So moved.
Have a motion from Rick Collins. We have a second from Bill Van Wy. Discussion. Does anybody have any discussion from the audience or from the council here regarding this transfer? If not, we'll call for the question. All those in favor of transferring $600 to consultant fees signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Transfer request has been approved. The next one we have is from Central Communications. And it says it's incentives, and I want to just kind of briefly go through this here after we go through the transfer request. It's, the fund name is Public Safety, fund number is 1170. The location number is 0034. The amount to be transferred is $500, and it's to be transferred from incentive to awards. Why is this transfer needed? There's a misunderstanding on my part. Our yearly service awards had to be in a separate account from our incentives. Will additional appropriations be requested due to the transfer? No. Was it discussed with the liaison? Yes, and that is Rick Ring. And this is not a monetary award going to somebody. This is for plaques that they do awards, I think at the end of the year. Is that right, Rick? Is what this is for. So it's not a monetary award going to anybody. It's for literally like trophies and awards here on that.
I'll make a motion that we approve this.
Okay, we have a motion from Rick Ring to approve. Do we have a second?
No, second it.
Second by Bill Van Wy. Okay, any further discussion or questions from the council? Any questions from the audience? Not, we'll call for the question. All those in favor of transferring $500 from the incentives account to the awards signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The transfer request for $500 has been granted. Okay, the next one comes from the prosecutor. Again, this is 2 items. We'll go through them, and we could handle this in one motion here. It is from the prosecutor's office. The fund is pretrial diversion, fund number 2501. The amount to be transferred is $4,600. It is going from the account of PTD office supplies, and PTD, the acronym is?
Pretrial diversion.
Pretrial diversion, thank you. I'm not big on acronyms, you can tell that. So it's going from pretrial diversion office supplies to pretrial diversion furniture fixtures, $1,600. And then from pretrial diversion replacement, EE is? Employee to pretrial diversion furniture and fixtures, $3,000. So a total of $4,600 going to furniture and fixtures for pretrial diversion. Why is this transfer needed? This transfer of money is needed to cover the purchase of 12 new chairs for the conference room in the prosecutor's office. Will additional appropriation be requested due to this transfer? The answer is no. Was it discussed with the liaison? Yes, and the liaison was Amy Dembski. So, first of all, do we have consensus from the council to handle these both in one motion? Okay, we have consensus. Okay, we have before us a transfer request for $4,600 for 12 new chairs in the conference room. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion by Amy Dembski. Do we have a second?
Second.
second by Rick Ring. Council, any further discussion?
Why is it still under Claire Mary's name on the bottom?
At the bottom of,
away, that's why.
At the bottom of the request,
the bottom of what?
The
transfer request,
paperwork.
submit Clara
Email address on the
Weinberger.
bottom.
That's Carla.
Carla Weinberger.
There you go.
Okay.
Submit it
It's
to Carla.
Okay. I thought it said, I looked at it real quick. I got her. I got her heart beating.
I'm like, I don't remember seeing that, but okay.
I
You
looked at it.
you sold me, Bill, but I believed you.
That's why they had to use their middle initial in there. 'cause
Yes.
There were two C. Weinbreckers.
Correct, yes.
I had a question. Are they out of funds in their furniture and fixture?
I don't know that
They
had
probably didn't have enough, if they even budgeted, I'd have to look.
And that,
I can tell
that
you
that pretrial diversion money is discretionary to the prosecutor. So they can use it for what they want to use it for.
Did that answer your question, Amy?
I'm not sure.
Well,
They-
furniture
It
and
doesn't
fixture?
come, this way, it doesn't come from the general fund.
Right.
Okay, so they
Yeah.
budgeted $2,000 for 2024. And they have spent so far 4,710 because of the chairs.
Did they just discover that they needed new chairs? Or was it just a?
They've
I don't have any idea.
I think they pieced a couple together and then were very
Bad
need of
shape?
replacement, yes.
Okay. What's your judgment? Thank you.
Duct tape only works so far.
Amy, did you get your question answered? Okay. Any further questions? Okay, we'll proceed to call for the question here then. All those in favor of the motion to transfer $4,600 to furniture and fixtures signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Transfer for $4,600 has been approved. The last one coming before us is from the GIS. And this is for $5,000. And the department is Developmental Services. It is from the programming software account, number 34120, to computer equipment, account number 44420 for $5,000. Why is this transfer needed? It is for the purchase of new desktop computers and laptops for the GIS department. Existing desktops are aged out and more for the data used. Laptops are needed because their existing ones are very old and one is broken. Will additional appropriation be requested due to this transfer? The answer is no. Was it discussed with the liaison? And that is no, and the liaison was Bill Van Wy.
We'll correct that. That was discussed well after you put
Okay,
that in. So
So-
I knew this was coming, but Susan recommended it happen a certain date, and I didn't discuss it for that.
okay, so the request is to transfer $5,000 from program and software to computer equipment for $5,000 from the GIS Developmental Service account. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion by Rick Collins. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Bob Kraft. Do we have any questions or discussion from the council? Any questions or from the audience? Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll call for the question then. We have a motion and a second to transfer $5,000 from program software to computer equipment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the transfer request for $5,000 for GIS projects is approved. And Susan, I believe that is all of the transfers and additionals that we have. Is there anything that we did not?
Nope,
Okay.
that's it.
All right. You also have then In your packet there, you have a list of the non-approval transfers that do not require council approval. And at this time, we have Randy Fox here for the airport. So, are you ready?
I don't know if that's true or not. Well, good morning, all.
Good morning.
We're still moving forward with the project on the runway. The avgas tank, the 12,000 gallon tank moving over to the Jet A is in process. My understanding is we ran into some issues that the avgas is corrosive and had damaged some of the pipes. They needed to be replaced. Once that's done, of course, you know, all the safety protocols of colors and things. So we'll do some repainting and then we'll put that tank into service. We'll have 24,000 gallons of jet gas on hand, plus a 5,000 gallon truck and a 2,000 gallon truck that we'll have to be able to deliver fuel. It doesn't say here, but there have been some notable uses of the self-fueling system where people basically drive up, put their credit card, taxi up, put their credit card in and fuel their airplane without any assistance from anybody at the airport. They do have to have their credit card installed in the system first, so we know who's doing that. But beyond that, it's pretty straightforward. The nav aids, the big one this year is the MALSAR is the acronym. It's when you see the TV movies and the lights are racing toward the end of the runway. The MALSAR lights right now, I was out at the storage building the other day, and they're all piled up on the floor waiting to be reinstalled. So they'll be putting in all of the anchors and foundations for those in the next couple months, hooking them all up, brand new wires to run. There is some groundwork to do out there yet. I think I mentioned it last month. You would think with radio, the earth wouldn't matter much, but the approach system requires some very flat graded surface out in front of the antennas to make the approach system work well. So that'll be underway shortly. And I didn't look this morning. Last I looked, the GoFundMe for the Meese Chapel move was a little over $18,000. And we were assured at the last board meeting by the representative from the Horsemen's Association that they will make their $25,000 goal by the designated time, which then, of course, gets them a matching grant from the state. So they'll have about $50,000 to pick the Meese Chapel up, take it away.
What is the designated time, Randy?
Someone, I think there was a by the end of the year quote, but obviously you don't want to be trying to put a foundation and stuff in October, November when it's raining and wet and cold. And so I'm assuming they'll lay the foundation and try to do that yet this summer. But it appears they're going to make their goal.
But this 25,000 will be raised before that, but I mean, it's
Right.
not like it's at the end of this month.
No.
Like that.
No.
Okay.
And honestly, we have no designs on tearing the building down. We never really did. In fact, our purchase wasn't for the building. We wanted the property. There's a big cutout where the church was, where our fence goes around that property that could be used for new hangars, for extended space to park other aircraft that are transient that come in and have to have a place to be. So we didn't really want the building. That was never the issue. And in fact, long before I was on the board, there was a gentleman's agreement, I guess, between the church and the airport that we wouldn't pursue moving them out. They would choose, because they knew their numbers were declining, that they would move out when it was appropriate, and that they would give the airport the first opportunity to purchase the property. So there was no design on the building itself. We were actually just looking for the property. And once the building's gone, I'm assuming we'll take that fence and move it back out to the edge and then close that area again on the airport proper instead of just leaving that extended out.
But the deadline is so that they can get the state grant for the additional money.
Right, right. There was a GoFundMe. I think it goes for another month and a half yet. And like I said, the first time I looked at it, about 2 weeks after it was out, it was about $6,000, and my heart sunk a little bit. I looked end of last week, and it was at 18.6, I think. So they've assured us that it was going to happen anyway, and often on those kind of situations, they do. So Meese Chapel will be taking a trip sometime this year, we assume, and we're ready for it. The whole name change thing is a process we're looking at. No one's decided we're changing the name yet. In fact, the underlying, we will always be the DeKalb County Airport Authority. And so if we change the name, it will be DeKalb County Airport Authority, DBA, something. So it's never going to be not a DeKalb County airport. There's no way around that. But we want to attract other business. And the business we really want to attract with a 7,000-foot runway with precision approaches is the jet traffic. And that brings in revenue. And that's what we want to do. And that way we don't have to depend on other sources, i.e.
I just got a message from Lita. She said the Horsemen
Yes.
will be meeting will meet the 25,000.
Yes. Yeah, that's what they told us last month at the board meeting. And like I say, it was 18.6 when I looked the other day. So pretty close.
Randy, possible though, the 18.6 is only the GoFundMe part of their fundraising. They have other donations being made to the Horsemen, I understand.
Yeah,
that don't
I would
involve-
assume.
That are directly being, somebody wants to write a check like
Right.
me as opposed to
Right,
going
and-
to the GoFundMe.
And in fact, the article, it was in paper, I've seen it online a couple times. People can donate directly to the DeKalb Community Foundation.
Correct.
You can donate a number of different places. So the 18.6 was just the GoFundMe.
GoFundMe.
And once they get that 25,000, the state has agreed to do a 25,000 matching grant to facilitate that move. The other Crown Jewel Marketing is just doing a survey for us to see what it would take, what it would be, what we could do. We've also engaged with Michael Kinder and Sons to do some soil borings out on that 70-acre stretch that we own south and west of the runway to see if it's suitable for construction. Because all the stuff there is there now, water, sewer, internet, 440, everything's there to put commercial enterprises in that would be compatible with the airport. Residential aren't. I mean, the new jets, if you're ever out there when one of the new jets takes off, you gotta almost be right behind it to hear it. They are quiet, they're efficient. We want them in and out as much as possible and collect the revenue from that. So that's the reason for looking at a name change, just to make. We had people on our waiting list for hangars that thought they were talking to DeKalb County Airport in Georgia. And so those folks have been purged. When Rick and I were working together regularly, it was funny because criminals from DeKalb County would do something horrible here and then run to DeKalb County, Georgia and get arrested there. I never understood that. And then they'd drag them back here to DeKalb County, Indiana to be tried. But it was.
I was in a meeting earlier this week, and the discussion was, we're getting all kinds of input from DeKalb County, Illinois, DeKalb County, Georgia, DeKalb County, Indiana.
Yeah.
It's all a big, it's confusing for people that don't actually live here, apparently.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons we're looking at something to identify us differently than other DeKalb counties for our airport. And then I also included the operations numbers, and you can see they're still pretty significant. 1,568 operations for the month of February, and the weather wasn't particularly good that month. And so we're continuing to use the runway. It's going to be closed 3 or 4 times over the next 4 months, in a couple places up to about 5 days, where there will be no traffic in or out, or only specialty traffic with a reservation, shall we say, because the guys are going to be out doing the construction right at the end of the runway, and we certainly don't want to run into people and equipment and things during that process. And with that, I'll take any questions if you have any.
Randy, there's probably quite a bit of red tape to go through, isn't there? Just for a name change, you probably got to go through the FAA, and I would assume there's probably a lot of.
Right, and that's things that we're investigating right now, because one of our instructor pilots that was at our board meeting last month said, if I look an airport up, I have to look it up, and it says Auburn. It doesn't say DeKalb County in their airport listing. So we're investigating what the FAA actually publishes, what we could do to get that fixed, whether we have to put a balloon up so people can see it from miles away. And I mean, just whatever. All of those logistics of making a name change or not are all under investigation right now. So nobody's set on anything. People are still coming here now, but the obvious confusion between DeKalb County, Georgia, I didn't know there was DeKalb County, Illinois. All of our criminals always went south, I thought.
Warmer weather.
Yeah, warmer weather. So it's not a done deal. It's under investigation, as is the commercial construction capabilities on the south side as well, to, again, enhance our revenue and decrease our need for other revenue.
One other quick question. This is just an old pilot question. I know, as you mentioned about avgas being corrosive.
Yes.
Has it always been, or is it the additives? Because, I mean, years ago when I was flying, you never worried so much about the corrosiveness of general aviation fuel.
I honestly don't know. The corrosive comment came from the folks that are working on the changeover. And I guess the Jet A is kerosene. The other is gasoline with all of the, like you say, all of the additives and things. So I'm not privy to that information, but that's what we've been told. Why the delay of getting those 2 massive tanks set right next to each other, and one was avgas, one was Jet A, and all they're doing now is putting plumbing in between and recoating the inside to make sure that the tank doesn't deteriorate due to the fuel and doesn't contaminate the fuel. And something to do with that plumbing in between has put a little monkey wrench in the works.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Randy?
Yeah,
Real quick, a statement, Randy. You know, the local coffee shop conversations is, of course, you hear things like the airport took over Meese Chapel. That was not the case.
No.
They approached the airport. We walked through with the aviation board.
Mm-hmm.
Remember those old attendance charts in churches, Methodist churches, and some of the older churches? That Sunday, 7 people. The Sunday before 6,
Right.
The church was not able to continue in that mode. And then the other thing was, when you bought the property there, you bought the property, and that was clear to them. You were not trying to buy the building. You're
Right.
not paying for a building. You were buying strictly the property, and that the building that will be moved is the sanctuary, and the sanctuary only. There will still be
Right.
add-ons there that will stand, that will need to be demoed.
That we'll have to demo,
and all
yes.
that. But yeah,
Right.
the Horsemen are only moving the sanctuary,
Right.
which is
And
really only the feasible thing that could move there
Yeah.
for the most part.
we dealt with the Methodist Church for nearly a year, off and on, trying to make connections, find out who owned the building, to get all the title insurance, or all the title and all that straight. And then we told them we only want the property. We don't want what's in the building. And we pretty much begged him to come and take the stuff, and told the congregation that was still there to take what you want, because we don't want a church. We don't want the pews. We don't want all the things that go with it. And so we ended up having to have an auction to dispose of most of that equipment, most of that material. And so, again, we weren't at all stressing them to move. It was of their own volition, and we were waiting patiently because we didn't have anything we were doing in that direction right then anyway.
No, I was just going to make a comment. You hit my question, you answered it, because I still remember when Bear Field was changed to Fort Wayne International Airport, and you made the comment for more identification, which I know I've been in DeKalb, Illinois, so I can tell you where that's at and everything. And that's why I was wondering why we needed change. And once you said, DeKalb County's Georgia and DeKalb and everything, and it needs to be more recognizable to our community so that we can have more business. Like you said, that's all I had to say.
Sure. Thank you.
Anybody else any questions? Thank you, Randy. Great report.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving along. Michelle. Welcome.
Oh, good morning. I am here today because the DOC has moved our budget timeline up yet again. Was hoping to come next month, but they have made the deadline April the 12th. We'll have our advisory board meeting on the Friday before that. I want to say it's the 5th. Don't quote me. And you guys don't meet again before that. So here I am. So I tried to send a summary last night, kind of showing you what we're working on doing. Our goals obviously were to continue being able to give our staff some raises so we can retain good quality people, but also as we're doing that and working through the cost increases for services and contracts and building maintenance, things that we have going on, we also were trying to reduce a little bit of the county general, I guess, supplement is what they call it for us. I'm sure it doesn't feel that way for others, but for us, they call it the supplement. So that's what we're trying to do. So I gave you both budgets because I am a frugal person and a realistic person, and I like to have a backup plan. So there's the grant submission, which shows what we plan to turn in. And that would be, I try to label it grant submission in the top left of the two budgets that I sent you guys. And so in that one, we would be asking, and I also sent a summary, we'd be asking the DOC for about $41,000 more in funding just to help us cover those staff raises. We're also going to be increasing our project income budget. We saw over the last 2 years that obviously we're budgeting what we think we might possibly need, hoping to spend less than that, and we've been able to do that. So we feel comfortable raising that project income budget so that we can cover some of these increased costs as well. I did put a couple points on there. We will be getting an actual mailbox, although it has to go out on, I can't explain it, guys. It has to go out on the highway. It can't go actually down Potter Drive. I think mostly because they don't want to drive down Potter Drive. So that will mean a staff member has to play Frogger to get to it across the other side of the highway, but they have assured me they feel comfortable doing that. So,
Excuse me. Hey, Susan, are we supposed to have this in front of us? Oh, okay.
Do you have two? Do you have one maybe? Because I don't have one.
Nope, that's when we got the one. Sorry to interrupt you.
You're fine.
We're totally mass confusion up here. Right there. You already filed it as if you talked to her already.
the other another piece of savings we were going to have is we did find out that we were paying too much for the time clock software, so we are going to have some savings there. That's the only areas in which I could find savings, unfortunately. So cost increases, we are getting billed $13,000 more by the Information Services Department for software that I believe either the cost has raised for them or they had been covering through their budget for us. And Jack said they will not be doing that any longer, so we had to figure out how to get that into the budget. and increases in equipment leasing and drug screening, which we've been talking about for over a year, I think. So, any questions, I guess, on the grant submission proposal?
I had a question. I think, didn't they cut your budget last year by 50,000?
Correct.
So why would you not ask, I'm not being accusatory, it sounds accusatory.
It's
So
fine.
it isn't. Why are you only asking for 41,000 additional instead of the 50 that you lost last year?
So I decided to do it incrementally because last summer, at a meeting in which representatives of the Department of Correction were there, they explained to us that the reason that they cut funding for so many programs last year was because they had actually been handing out more in grant funding than they were given in the state budget. So when they had done the grant funding in past years, if you didn't use all of it, you returned it to them and they put it back in their pot, which didn't revert anywhere. It stayed in that pot. What they started doing instead is having us, and I can't remember what year this started, they started having us keep our unspent funds in the every other year rotation, so that when we get back to the every other year, they just subtract it from whatever they award us. So the DOC had been handing out more than they received because they were relying on that bank of past returned funding. And I think they realized last year that they were going to be running out of that. And so they needed to start only handing out awards in the amount that they actually are receiving from the state budget. So my hope with the 41,000 that there's either a program that cuts what they're asking for, they decide to not fund it, or something like that happens, because that's the only way any of us are getting more funding. Because I'm realistic and realize that probably won't be happening is why I have the second budget, if that makes sense. So our hope is if there's any kind of funding for whatever reason that some other county doesn't need, isn't using, shut their program down, something like that, maybe we get a piece of that. Yeah.
Michelle, and I appreciate you being on top of it. This has always been a concern of mine, is what if the grants are reduced or what if they disappear? And just an old piece of history, and this is before you, I was chastised for asking that question, what would happen? That I was assured that the grants will never disappear, and basically, how could I ask a question like that? I appreciate you being on top of this here. What do you need from the council today, bottom line?
Well, so the second budget, what I have in there is obviously if we receive the exact same amount of grant funding that we received last year. And if that's the case, I'm actually prepared to slightly raise the amount we're going to spend in project income. But that would mean that we would need an increase in the county supplement of $7,180 to cover everything, including staff raises, what we're guessing would be the probation officer's salary schedule increase for this year. Obviously, they threw us a loop last year by raising it so much, but we're assuming that won't happen again. We've heard chatter that won't happen again. So, I mean, I guess that's it.
Okay, so you're looking at
$7,180.
basically an additional for $7,180, is that correct then, or?
It won't be an additional, it would be during the budget process.
It'll be during the budget, okay.
Correct.
So,
But she's telling us that the amount that we are paying from county general right now, through insurance benefits, we took on some wages to help get their department up to where the county is. All of that would increase by the $7,180 if they have to go to the budget without the increase.
That's the total, that's not per person, or?
Correct. That's the total.
That's the total.
That's the total.
did I just hear you say that you did put in some wage increase guess? I mean, this is always a mess because you guys, budget's due now and we don't decide on how much of an increase we're going to do until June. But, I mean, I hope you did, that you
Yeah.
did put some in there as a guess, and maybe guess high if you have to get less from the state, or if you, like you said, you don't spend it, you don't spend it. But I would guess when you were requesting from the state, from the grant, I'd guess high on that. So.
Yeah, so this is with an increase for all the staff based on, years of service, their last reviews, any any additional duties they've taken on or certifications or anything like that.
I just don't want you to not have enough in your budget from them, and if we made a higher rate or something, then you didn't have enough requested from the state. So.
Anybody else have any questions for Michelle?
Yeah, I had another one. Michelle, in the beginning, I know that the folks that were coming out there to stay have to pay some amount, correct? Is that still the case, and has that amount increased, or is that the same as it has been from the beginning?
That is still the case. Those are the funds that we're using that we're calling the project income. That's where that comes from, is them paying their fees to be on the program. The amount has not increased. It's fairly consistent with what it is in other counties, both to be on the electromagnetic monitoring and to be in the work facility. The work facility fee is actually slightly higher than it is in some of our surrounding counties.
So what you're saying is they pay us to stay there, as opposed to if they're in jail, where we have to pay for them, plus we have to pay for all of their medical benefits if they're in jail. We don't pay any medical benefits if they're in the work release program.
Exactly. And so in either one of the budgets, it's going to be about $600,000 that we're using out of project income, and that's where we're getting that from, is the fees that the participants are paying to be part of the program. It helps us pay for their electronic monitoring equipment leasing and the things that obviously we have to pay to run the program, to provide food, to do building maintenance, and all those different things.
I want to thank you, Michelle, because it's because of community corrections that we've been able to get the jail population down as low as we have, even though we've still not made it, other than a few weeks, under the 80. But it's because we're able to use community corrections, and you're taking over, you and probation department taking over the program has made it successful. So you've been doing a great job.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Michelle? Michelle, the council really appreciates the early heads up here on this here, so thank you. And appreciate all you're doing.
You're welcome. I'm also on the schedule about the change agreement.
Pardon?
The change
Yes.
agreement for the next 3 years was also on the schedule, and we ran into a little problem on Monday with the commissioners. I wasn't there, but Susan let me know that they had concern that Hamilton was still listed in the MOU, even though they were not a member of the Change Academy for many years. No one remembers quite how many, and obviously I wasn't here. And then last year they contacted us, and the superintendent wanted to join. So we added 2 seats onto the Change Academy for them. That superintendent has since moved on to a different school district, and there's an interim superintendent who now says they don't want to be part of it now that it was time to sign the next 3-year agreement. So what we had to do then, and this change budget, the juvenile, is a fiscal year, so it's already been turned in. So what we're looking at now is how do we remove those 2 seats, and therefore like the $10,000 that would have provided for us in what they call the juvenile ordinance, the school fund, right? So what I did was I did get the MOU changed, and luckily the other 3 superintendents were very understanding and went ahead and signed it again. So it's already fixed and re-signed without mention of Hamilton in it. But then I had to do some work on adjusting that budget as well, and I think I sent that to you guys in the email last night as well. So our thought process was to see if there was anywhere we could save some money. We could only squeeze so much out, so that was about $1,700 that we found a way to squeeze out of there. And our next plan for that, we did have the chance to redo a couple staff budgets. We have some staff turnover, so some people that are being paid less than the person that was previously in that position, so we could save some money in that area for this budget that'll be starting in July. And the only other way that we could find to make it all work was to start spending some project income from juvenile, which there is not much. So this really is not going to be like a long-term tenable thing for us. I emailed down to the juvenile coordinator of grants because I wanted to be sure that's going to be allowed, because in our original grant application, we hadn't had a project income budget. She emailed me back just this morning and let me know that I cannot change it in the final grant submission, which is due, I believe, next week. because it wasn't in the original, but we could attempt to do a grant amendment later after July when this actually starts to put that in. So that leads me to a problem because there was about $4,900 that we were going to try to use out of project income that she's now telling me I can't actually do until later in the year. So one of the things similar to the adult that we were trying to do was cover more of these things by using grant funding or the juvenile ordinance, the school fund. And since that isn't going to be possible, we may have to move some of that back into the county general. Last year, since this is a fiscal year, last year, the county had given us some funding in that, and I have the form here that Shannon printed out for me. We weren't going to be using it all because we were going to be obviously trying to use all the grant funding and things like that first. And so that is going to take us obviously through December of '24. So I think if we just use that funding first, that could cover the $4,900, and then once July starts, we can try to do the grant amendment with project income.
And that's
that
money
makes sense.
that's already been appropriated to you?
Correct. It was,
From last year?
it's in 2024?
For Change Academy?
Yes. Looks like it was $38,643.
Just looking at a question, two questions. One, years ago, or several years ago, was this program housed at Eastside High School? I noticed before you came here, was it not housed over there instead of a separate building? Anybody?
I couldn't say. I know that the Change Academy started in 2012. And I don't know if it was housed somewhere before it was in its current location. I can't answer that.
Okay. And the other question, Michelle, and I probably know the answer to this, you cannot go back and adjust the other members what they pay to offset Hamilton coming out. You can't basically raise theirs to offset this?
Well, excuse me, the new agreement that we have in front of us for the next 3 years actually has already raised their cost per student, per seat. We say it per seat because they are paying for those seats whether they actually have a student using it or not. So we had already raised it by nearly $500 per seat to come up with the budget that we turned in our grant application. That was something that we had meetings with them about. They said they understood. They said it had been years since the fee per seat had been raised at Change Academy, so they weren't really surprised by that. And they took it to their school boards and they had it approved at that rate, at that level. So at this point, they're paying $5,000 per seat to have that option of sending students to the Change Academy. And the 2 seats that we had for Hamilton were actually added. So the program was 24 seats. When Hamilton wanted to join, said they thought they could use 2, we raised it to 26. So what we're doing now is simply taking it back to 24.
So I had 2 questions. One is, did Hamilton ever use those seats?
No.
Okay, they did not, so that makes
did
sense
not.
for their budget.
So that was,
Yeah.
and they came back, and I want to say the final agreement was signed by them in maybe September. So it's been from September to now, and they hadn't used a seat.
And then you made reference that the interim superintendent, if I understand correctly, they have voted.
Okay.
I don't know if it's one and the same. I didn't follow the names. See that, but I saw that
Okay.
they, if, I don't know if it's a different person. I don't know if that changes.
Possibly.
Possible.
Find out who it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I think one of the other pieces that's in their budget, and you may or may not realize this, but you have to pay rent for the location for the Change Academy. And when the design of community corrections was done, there was going to be a room for the Change Academy there, but the superintendents all said that it was not a good idea to have the students on the same grounds with the adult offenders. So that's why they still have to rent a separate location, because they took that piece out of community corrections.
See, I may be wrong, but I thought it was housed in another school at one time.
Jody said it
Yeah.
was.
I think Eastside kind of initiated it.
I think so, and it was a big savings. Now, I don't know if we could ever go back to that or not. My question is, and this is probably going to be Susan, since the commissioners did not sign off on this, where does the council proceed on this then? Do we, or do we need to wait on a signature approval, or where do we go?
Well,
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know that's what I'm doing. I don't mean to
I
do
just
that.
think there's more unanswered questions from getting this. I had emailed back last night because the total amount had changed. The percentage was not typed correctly for Garrett. I see that we took the 10,000 away from the total amount, so if we took the 10,000 away, then why is there additional funding needed to be from county general? The county general budget that we appropriated was for wages for Change Academy. Not to say it can't be transferred, but that's not what you had initially approved. Unless Don knows something I don't. I just think there's a lot of unanswered questions, and the commissioners had questions yesterday, which is why they didn't approve it. So that's up to you guys, I guess.
So, addressing it with the council, this is something then that would need to come back with more answers.
Table it.
Yeah, that'd be the best, that would be a suggestion.
But I don't know if you don't have a motion or anything on it. I don't know that.
Right, this was non-action today anyway, correct?
Well, they thought it was going to be,
I
but
understand
that
that.
was when the commissioners were going to approve it yesterday, and they didn't.
What's the council's pleasure? We have consensus on that? To table it?
Well, that's fine.
Do we get, okay. So,
But it's the only thing I want, this ain't on a timeframe this year.
Well,
you have April 12th deadline for,
April 12th is the deadline for the adult grant.
that's for the adult grant.
It is. The juvenile grant has been sent back for revision. They want us to change a couple goals and some other questions. They're really starting to bring up a lot of discussion at the state level about never charging a juvenile a fee, which is going to be problematic because obviously we use those fees to pay some of the bills eventually. So what we're trying to do is figure out, if they don't want us paying fees, what exactly are we supposed to do to run programs, which they haven't provided an answer for. This revision for this grant has to be back by March 18th, is what I'm being told. So I have to provide some kind of budget to go with it, just so that we can move forward with the agreement for the next fiscal year.
Don?
So have you given anybody the revised budget?
I thought it was in the email I sent. Was it not?
Okay, are you talking about adult or juvenile? They're wanting to know if these change agreements are on a deadline.
The change agreement, the deadline for the change agreement would just before we start the next school year, so it'd also be July.
That was the question.
But I have to send a budget back into the state by March 18th, in which I need to make some changes to account for the $10,000 that we won't have, that was in the original application submitted when we thought Hamilton was going to be part of it.
Question for Don. Is this something that the council can act on without the commissioner's signature? Mm-hmm.
They didn't approve it because Hamilton was still in it. There was $130,000 for a total, and there was a question as to where the other $10,000 was going to go. Then at 4 o'clock last night, when we got this, I questioned because it's now $120,000, so right there's a $10,000 difference. So I'm not sure why there's different funding that needs to be done. I haven't seen any of the numbers. This is literally all I have.
So what I'm hearing is you need from the council by March 18th, assurances for the $10,000?
I only need an
Get you
answer,
through that signature, that piece of the puzzle?
correct, so I can submit a budget again. Did I not attach the juvenile budget in the email yesterday? I thought that I did.
All
with
we
the
have is
MOU.
the adult budget, the adult
Okay.
grant, and the Change Academy
Okay.
MOU.
So I have the redone juvenile budget as well as that explanation of what we tried to do to change the $10,000, which included doing the $4,900 out of project income until I was informed this morning that that won't necessarily be allowed to happen when we resubmit the grant by March 18th. That's something that we would have to try to do as a grant amendment after it starts in July.
The budget's at the end of that agreement. It's all in one document that you sent yesterday.
Okay.
Juvenile budget. Juvenile budget. Yeah.
Oh, we're looking that up. Is this something, and I don't know what we pay for rent at another facility for this, for the program. Is this something that maybe another school corporation could house to save money?
That's not something we've ever talked about. It's something we could maybe look into.
Pardon?